as they pop in. Well, welcome here. My name is Joe Wahlberg. I'm the Director of Speech and Debate for St. James Academy. I am joined up in what is my first rectangle in the top left by Steve Du Bois, the Speech and Debate Coach at St. Thomas Aquinas. It's funny, even though we are in rival schools, I would say that Steve is one of my best coaching friends, and I really enjoy his company, and I am super excited to co-host this tournament with him. We've worked together on a couple other projects, and I'm excited for it this year as well. So what we're going to do today, we are going to open up in prayer, and then I'm going to talk about just kind of what makes a debate judge and what you can expect in a round. And then when we reach the end of it, I will turn off the recording and we can ask some questions, whatever you got, and we'll kind of field some questions for that. But without further ado, I would like to open in prayer. This is a prayer that I use with my debaters. It's a prayer of Saint Columba of Iona, who is an interesting Irish saint, a patron saint of poets, and a person that cared deeply about words. So this is, we've named him the patron of our team at St. James, and this is where we'll begin. If you'll join me, we'll begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord, grant us that love which can never die, which will enkindle our lamps, but not extinguish them, so that they may shine in us and bring light to others. Most dear Savior, enkindle our lamps, that they may shine forever in your temple. May we receive unquenchable light from you, so that the darkness will be illuminated, and the darkness of our world will be made less. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. So first I want to talk a little bit about just kind of overall as a welcome to our game. Thank you for being willing to be a judge at the St. James Academy and St. Thomas Aquinas Policy Debate Tournament. Academic debate began in the United States somewhere in the mid-1830s. The modern version that we play today really came out about 100 years ago. And I like to say that here you're taking your place in a long line of academic debate, and welcome to the game. You are what makes the game possible. Our young people that go out into debate, they experience such awesome things. I am truly convinced that the debate is a life-changing growth activity, but it is only possible with the help of people like you who tag in and make the game possible for us. We couldn't do it without you. And before we get lost in the weeds of debating, I want to begin with just sort of like an encouragement to say, relax. You are probably going to do fine. I'm confident in it, because debaters, part of the activity, this is a communication activity, part of the activity is that they need to recognize their audience. They need to recognize their judge. They need to adapt to what their audience wants to hear. And so it is their job to meet you where you are, not the other way around. Now, we are talking about 14 to 18-year-olds and they're adolescents, and they're still learning how to do all of that stuff, including talk to adults. And this is part of the activity where they get to do it. But it's how they are adapting. So the debater is there to come meet you. Our tournament is a novice and an open tournament, which is to say that they are people that are learning the game. Those are our novices. Those are our first-year players. And an open division is just like open to anybody at an experience level. So you might have first years in the open division. You might have 4-year debaters who are seniors in the open division. So you've got either people who are learning the game right alongside you. And I want you to feel like that is a vote of confidence, that they are learning the game right alongside you. Or they're people that have been around the game for a little bit, and these are the people that are actually really awesome at adapting to their judge. So in both cases, you are the star, and they're going to meet you where you are. So I want you to remember that when it gets right down to it. And I'll also say this whole activity of speech nationwide, we're seeing the same thing in Kansas, but nationwide, the whole activity is rebuilding after the COVID years. And so this is kind of an experience everywhere that people have a lot of those of us learning the game all together, both on the competitor level or on the judging level. Now, in the email that I sent you that invited you to this meeting, I gave you a link to a packet. I've printed mine off because I think it's easier for me to work with notes in here. But I'm going to start on this first page. And on the first page of that packet, it says, STA Policy Debate Tournament Judges Packet. And there's a little box that's kind of like the too long didn't read version, the simple version of the gray box in it. And there are 6 things that are kind of like, that's the floor of judging. Be there on time, you listen to the round, you keep an open mind on it. After the round, you decide if they convinced you to affirm the resolution or negate the resolution. Then what is absolutely the hardest part, you have to rank the debaters of the 4 debaters that are in. I'm dumping a lot of information. We'll unpack this as we go. There's 4 debaters in the room. You're going to find out who was the best debater in the room. They're going to get the 1 because it's a ranking and you want to be ranked number 1. And then you down to the 4. If 1 is the best debater in the room, 4 is the not best debater in the room. We'll put that one gently. And then you turn in your ballot after the round to one of the Catholic school students that is there to receive you. They'll be in their Catholic school uniforms. You'll be able to find them. And then you check back into the judges table to go see if you're judging in the next round. And that's kind of the whole game. I'm going to put some more details on it, but that's the overall kind of the floor of what you'll do. And then there's an excellent box. It is bright yellow where you're going to see it. And this was my friend, Mr. Du Bois, wrote this a number of years ago, and I love it. And again, there's a lot of sometimes judge anxiety in a debate round. And I just want you to know that you don't need to carry those bags. You don't need to carry the judge anxiety bags, because you basically can't make a wrong decision in a debate round because the debaters are adapting to you. You are the answer. I mean, it's your decision is the decision, right? It's a communication activity. It's their job to convince you that they're the team worth voting for. And so any decision that you reach, as long as you are reaching it with reasonable, honesty about what the round that happened in front of you, it's going to be fine. And you're going to do great as a judge. There are some times that debaters don't like the decision you reach because they're teenagers, because they're human beings and we don't like being told that we're wrong for stuff, right? You might make a judgment that will really upset some 15-year-old somewhere. And let me tell you, welcome to the club. As a teacher, I do that all the time. But what it really is that they should be reaching you where you are. And so you can't make a bad decision as long as you're being fair about the round that you actually saw. Not the round that you wish that you saw, but the round that you actually saw, you made a good decision. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a good debate judge before we get lost in the weeds of the game. So a good debate judge is fair-minded and is honest. And your feelings about the topic are actually not in play in this event. For academic debate, your feelings about the topic are not actually in play. What is the topic? The topic is on that front page of the packet, and it's kind of a long sentence here, and it's complicated. I'm going to read it do my best speaker voice. Resolved, the United States federal government should substantially increase fiscal redistribution in the United States by adopting a federal jobs guarantee, expanding Social Security, and/or providing a basic income. So there's a couple of pieces of that, and I'll talk more about these in a little bit, but it is basically the idea that the government should manage money differently to receive it from one group of people or one part of America and give it to another. Again, we'll talk about this more in a second. The framers of this debate assumed that we are taking money from people that have it and give it to people that don't have it. But as it says, it's a strictly neutral resolution. And I guess they could take poor people and give it to rich people. I don't think that, I haven't seen any of that in the round, but it's basically the idea of fiscal redistribution. Now, when adults hear fiscal redistribution, all of our alarm bells begin triggering in a lot of different ways. And there's a whole bunch of politics that's going to swoop into that. And I am going to trust you that you will not pay attention to your alarm bells and just listen to the round that plays out in front of you. What are the debaters grappling with this issue saying, and not what we want them to say, because we're judging debates, not people on this one. Okay, but what makes a good debate judge? To be fair-minded and honest, and your feelings about the topic aren't there in play. They are there to reach you. And a good debate judge will take a lot of good notes as they can. There could be a lot of information. People who stay around the debate world for a long time actually learn to develop a note-taking method. I put a picture of it up here on your screen. Debaters call this flowing or flow sheeting, and it's a way of tracking arguments in a round. I do not expect, and nobody expects, judges new to the game to be able to keep flow sheets. But it would be nice to take some notes. So bring a pad of paper and a pen that you like and take some notes during your round, because it's not like jury. You are allowed to take notes, and you will appreciate it if you have taken some notes when it comes time to judge on it. So bring a paper and some pens. We will offer some water and some coffee. And I also ask you to bring a little disposition towards growth, because the first time that you sit in a debate round, if your experience is like mine, the first time I sat in a debate round, you're going to feel like, oh my goodness, that it was so much overwhelming all at once, and just be willing to let yourself grow in the activity with it. So what is the game that you're going to be seeing? How's the game played? Well, policy debate is made up of two high schoolers who make a debate team, and they're going to be debating against another two-person team. One of those two-person teams is going to be in favor of the resolution, and there's going to be another team that is going to be against that resolution. They're going to either affirm the statement or negate the statement. And they don't get to pick which side they're on. Actually, over the course of a debate, they will be both sides. In one round, they're going to be affirming the resolution, and in the next round, they're going to be negating the resolution. And the whole activity of debate, as far as I can tell, in my opinion, is that it's about teaching people to see all sides of a complicated issue, and also to be able to treat people with opposing opinions with some intellectual respect and good faith argumentation. So they honestly, debaters probably have opinions on this topic as well, but they learn to set that aside and just practice the activity. They're going to go into a room. There's going to be the 5 of you in a room. Sometimes there will be 7 of you in a room, because some of our rounds will be paneled with a couple of judges, but there's a pretty good chance you'll just be by yourself in a round. The debaters are going to move their desks in the room, and they all have permission to do that. They'll move the desks where they see fit. Usually they want to sit by their partner and not terribly close to the other team or to the judge, so they can confer to each other. They have timed speeches, and I'll talk more about the time limits of speeches a little bit later. But they have 3 kinds of speeches. There's going to be a constructive speech where they're constructing their arguments. They're going to have cross-examinations, which aren't exactly speeches, but whatever. They're going to have cross-examination periods where they ask each other some questions. And there's going to be rebuttals where they try to tie all that back together. Like I said, the teams rotate positions. One round they're affirmative, one round they're negative. And that's kind of the 10,000-foot view of what the game is. So what do you do as a judge? Well, let's kind of walk through those pieces. And before the round, and if I'm here on page 2 of my packet here, before the round, we would like to ask you to check into the judges table about 15 minutes plus or minus before that round begins. We will have a paper ballot for you. You see an example of a paper ballot up on your screen right now. Ours might look a little bit different, but that's more or less what they look like. That way you're going to get your ballot. Your ballot will have your name on it. It will have the debaters' names on it. You are going to take only your ballot. I know that you're going to walk through and say, oh, I saw Mary down the hall. I'm going to take Mary her ballot. I would appreciate it if you didn't. Just kind of let us know that we've seen everybody ahead of time. So you're going to take your ballot and only your ballot. Some rounds may have more than one judge. You may be the only judge in the round. Both of them are acceptable ways to play debate. We'll have some judge instructions available. This packet I'm going to have printed out and set at the table for you there if you want to look at it while we go. We want you to be in your assigned room about 5 minutes before the round is scheduled to begin. We ask our high school debaters not to go in the room until there's an adult there. So they'll need a couple of minutes to set up. We'd like you to get there, 5 minutes or so before the round is scheduled to start. That way they can get set up and they'll be ready to go on the way in for that. So then the round is going to start. Once they've set up their desks, the round is going to start. And at the beginning of the round, like I said, you're going to be there about 5 minutes ahead of time. The teams will come up and they might need to write their names on your ballot. They might be pre-printed. It's kind of the way that when they're with their coach registered for the school, I'm expecting them all to have their names pre-printed on there, but they might want to come up and check. They might confirm that their team codes are correct. Some of them might try to ask, try to say, well, I'm going to be the first affirmative speaker. I'm going to be the second negative speaker. And there'll be spots that they can either mark their position in or you can write it in for it. Some teams will try to shake your hand. I always tell my debaters, please don't say that adults don't really want to touch you, but some of them will want to come up and shake hands with you, and that's just polite. So they want to introduce themselves, and they're practicing adult life skills as well. And they might ask you about your experience with judging. Sometimes this sounds like, do you have a paradigm? And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. It is totally acceptable to say, this is my first time judging, or I've judged a couple of rounds, but I'm still pretty new to the game, or Yes, I've been judging for 30 years, and here's everything that I look for in a good debate. A paradigm is basically like how does a judge, like, what things do they like to see in a good academic debate? That's kind of some of the lingo, a paradigm for it. The term we use for people that are new to the game is that they are a lay judge. We borrow a little church language on this one and say, oh yes, I'm a lay judge. I mean, you're not a debate cleric, I guess. But yeah, and it's totally okay to say, I'm new to the game. I'm a lay judge. I'm a parent of a kid. My neighbor asked me to judge for it. And that does not like a discrediting thing for you. That's, again, it's part of our game, and they're trying to figure out how to meet you where you are on that one. Okay, so that's the beginning of the round. During the round, the debaters are going to debate, and we want you to listen to the arguments and take any of the notes that you need to as necessary. That ballot, that piece of paper that you have, is going to be there to give comments on. It's where you're going to put your decision, who actually wins the round, but it's to make comments on it. And we would ask that you fill out your comments as your round is going. When I judge rounds, my ballots look like total stream of consciousness. They look like an awful Faulkner novel that, like, there's just the thoughts are just rolling out of it in a row. So that's okay to do. It's if you think like, well, I want to make a really smart sounding ballot. I appreciate that. The students will appreciate that, but they also will appreciate real-time commentary. So I really want to caution you, don't wait until the end of the round to like formulate your beautiful ballot for it. If you're new to judging, you're going to have kind of some thought soup that will all be swirling around in there, and you're going to just fill it out as you go. It's okay to keep a stream of consciousness on there. Also, it's kind of nice to get us back and keep the round moving. The tournament must go on, right? So don't wait until the end to make your comments going up. Now, do not. Now, actually, I have to update this slide. It says do not keep time. This is Acacia rule. This is actually not Acacia rule. I had misinterpreted it when I was making this this feedback on it. You are welcome to keep time. I would encourage you not to bother. The debaters will keep their time, and if they're really, popping in the game, they will keep each other's time. And it's not insulting if, like, if one debater, one team is keeping some other teams, that's not insulting. It's just kind of the way it keeps everybody honest on it. So they will keep each other's time. You are welcome to keep time, but you don't need to. You don't worry about that. It is a timed game. The speeches have time limits, but the debaters should police that themselves. We also ask you not to interrupt it around unless it's absolutely an emergency. If you have just dumped coffee in your lap, or you just need to leave the room for something, we've had it where people are staying close to a telephone because they're monitoring a family situation, whatever. Please don't interrupt around unless you absolutely cannot wait for an hour or an hour and 30 minutes to go get that thing finished. The debaters want to be able to keep the round moving. The tournament needs to keep the round moving. If it's just like, you know what, I ate my donut and I want another one, hold off, donut man. We're going to get you one of those in about an hour, but don't eat it then yet. If there are panels, if there's a panel of judges, and quite a few of our rooms, quite a few of our rounds will have 3 adult judges in the room, we would ask that you don't confer with the other judges until everybody's done and you've signed the ballot and you're back in our hospitality lounge afterwards. Just let everybody kind of work on their own. We think of this as sort of a judge respect for each other. You might want to ask one of the other judges, like, hey, did you understand that third quotation that they read? Please just don't engage that, especially until the ballot is signed. I know you might have questions. We're asking you to make a judgment. That's why you're called a judge. Just do your best to make your decision on it. But please don't confer with other judges about it. When you're back in our hospitality round and refilling your coffee and getting that donut you wanted an hour ago, you can talk to the other judges then. But please don't confer them in the round. I would also say to please not reveal your decision to the debaters or to anyone else. There will be some debaters who will just hang around afterwards and say, like, hey, did you vote affirmative? And I would encourage you to just say, well, I guess you'll see when you get the ballot, or I've written a good ballot, or Mr. Wahlberg asked me not to tell. Please don't reveal the decision to debaters or anyone else. There's a wide range in the debate coaching community as to like whether or not debaters know their wins and losses during the tournament, and we would just ask you to kind of respect the purview of the coaches on that. They could, like, I'm one of those coaches. I don't tell my debaters if they've won or lost any of their rounds, because I want them focused on the next round, not the last round. And you can help all of this activity on there. We'd also say don't offer lengthy oral feedback or criticism on it. There are some judges, particularly if you've been around for a while, they say, oh, would you like some oral critiques? And they, gather the children like Socrates in the agora and try to like teach them about debate for a little bit. We ask you not to do that. The tournament's got to go on. We got to get to our next round. So yeah, fill out a good ballot, and that's going to do most of the work for you. When the round is over, you're going to complete your ballot, and you're going to decide who won the round. One team must win. There are no ties in policy debate. It's so you got to decide that one of these teams won. And sometimes it's close. Honestly, I've judged a lot of rounds. They were like, man, this came down to a hair-splitting deal because this was a really well-matched teams on it, but guess what? You got to pick a team. And remember, the judge is always right. Your decision is final and not subject to appeal. If a kid comes up to me as a tournament director later and says, oh, Mr. Wahlberg, can you believe what Bill Williamson, I'm just making, there's no Bill Williamsons in this call right now. It doesn't look like it. Can you believe what that person said? You got to overturn this decision. I will not. In fact, I cannot. It's not the way the game is played. So your decision is final and not subject to appeal. So go ahead and make your decision on it. Then you're going to rank the competitors. Like we said, these are rankings. So 1 is the best. You want to be ranked number 1. We go 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is not the best. Now, I'm going to say this next part. And it's going to be the part that will fill some people with anxiety. And again, I want you to let your judging anxiety go because we'll walk you through this. The rankings need to match the decision. So the best debater in the round gets the 1, the second best gets the 2, the third best gets the 3, the fourth best gets the 4. And the winning team has to have better ranks or equal to ranks than the losing team. So you could have a 1 and a 4, the best debater and the worst debater in the room, and the 2 and the 3, and that's called a split decision, and those happen. But you cannot say that these 2 were not the best debaters in the room and didn't win the round. Like you can have a 1, a 3, a 2, and a 4, whatever, but the lower number has to be on the winning team on it. Now, we call these speaker rankings, and sometimes it's easy to think of it as like, well, that kid's just a really beautiful speaker. I didn't buy his arguments. He's full of crap, but man, what beautiful crap. Okay, like that. I want you to think of 1, 2s, 3s, and 4s as like the best debater in that round. And so the combination of the best 2 debaters need to win on that. So like I said, that could be a 1 and a 4, they could be on the team, or a 1 and a 3, they could be on the winning team, or a 2 and a 3 could be on the winning team. But I've now just super overcomplicated this, and it will make a lot more sense once we are actually judging in rounds. So if this is giving you anxiety, fear not, we can sort it out on Saturday. But the rankings must match the decision. And when we have trouble and I've got to go call Bill Williamson and say, hey, Bill, we have a numbers problem on your round. I'll call him up afterwards after the round. We can't actually go to the next round until we settle that one. That's going to be the reason we have tournament problems. That said, I'm confident we can fix any of these problems that come up. So don't let that be your judging anxiety. You're going to provide appropriate feedback on the ballot, some of which you did during the debate round. Then you're going to walk out of your classroom. You're going to look for the Catholic school student that's around you, and you say, I have a ballot from room 1121. They're going to say, thank you, Mr. Williamson. And you're going to go out to glorify the Lord. Or you're probably going to go back down to the judges table and say, okay, that was round 1. That was great. I loved it. Where do I go for round 2? And they're going to hand you another ballot on it. So that's what happens before, at the beginning, during, and after the round. I want to talk for a second about the feedback that you're going to give to debaters. And if you're following along in your packet, I'm skipping ahead to page 5, which is the green, yellow, and red page there. I'm going to talk about helpful feedback you can give on your ballot. Things about the arguments that you saw. Were they organized well? I think of this all the time. Like, man, debate could be just such a dumping of information. Was it organized well? Could I follow it as just a viewer in the room? Was it logical? Did the team ask me to make some logical leaps that I'm just not going to make? The validity of their claims. Were they asking me to make some conclusions that are just not valid things? Or do they explain a complicated idea well? Or were you kind of confused about a complicated idea? Did they refute all the arguments? When the opponent said so-and-so, did they respond to that? Those really helpful feedback about the argumentation that you saw or the presentation that you saw. This kid gave really good eye contact, or all you did was read off your packet the whole time, or hide behind your, I'm sorry, I debated in the 90s. Everybody had packets then. Or they just hide behind computer screens the whole times, right? Or they have good posture. They stood up in the front of the room. They were clear. I could understand what they were saying, or I could not understand what they're saying because they're teenagers and you've heard them, they mumble like crazy, right? Or that their pace was too fast. This is a common thing we see about debaters that speak all the time, get to talking at like a 400 words per minute, and that's actually not an unreal number. I don't think they're going to do it at our tournament, but whatever. So you could say like, hey, you just need to slow down. I didn't understand all that. That's a normal feedback. Or your pace was really good. You had a lot of information, but I understood all of it. And again, they're teenagers, so volume is always one of those things. I can't hear you, speak up. That's really helpful feedback. That is awesome. That really gives a kid a lot to work with and grow. Now, there's some stuff that like I'm going to put up a yellow flag on it and feedback caution. And here we're just kind of getting into, I think, adult expectations of teenagers, which I'll say this now that I am firmly in the gray beard and adult category. Teenagers just don't understand a lot of good advice that adults are giving them. And I want to throw up a yellow flag on this one. Any aggressive or assertive behavior, anything that could be misconstrued, I would want to say, like, I don't know a polite way to say this. Girls get accused of being bitchy all the time. And I think it's an unfair criticism because girls are learning how to be assertive in a game which recognizes assertiveness. And they're still learning that. This is where they learn it. So if you're I have absolutely made comments about people like, man, you were being really mean to that person, or you were being super rude about it. But I want you to like put your most gentle gloves on this one because they're teenagers figuring it all out. I'll also say pitch of voice is a not very helpful feedback. If a kid has a squeaky voice, that's just the way the good Lord made them. And I'm not sure that'll help. I will also say jokes I love jokes. I think of myself as a very funny person. Jokes do not work on debate ballots. They don't work. They're going to make someone angry on that. All of this is couched in the yellow flag of saying that some feedback will feel very personal to kids, even if you don't mean it to be personal, even if you're trying to be a neutral, and I think most people do want to go be good, helpful feedback givers. I mean, that's why we try to help kids and stuff when they ask, because we want to help them grow and give good feedback. Debate sometimes feels very personal, and if it can be taken in the most difficult way, somebody is going to take it that way, even if you don't mean it to. And lastly, I want to tell you there's some stuff that is unhelpful feedback. And the number one flag on this is any comments about a person's appearance or resources. Now here, this could be, I used to do this all the time when I was first learning to judge. I would make a little comment like, hey, I like your tie, or that's a really pretty dress, or I'm not sure this was the right choice for a debate round if somebody was wearing something that I didn't think was an appropriate dress for it. I would just like to ask you, just as a teacher charity on this one, don't make those comments on the ballot. If there's something that is a real problem that you're like, oh man, this kid should not be out in public like that, please come talk to me. I will take it up with their coach who has some authority with the kid. Don't put it on the ballot. It's just going to go badly. Even if you made it in true Christian charity, it's going to go badly. And if you think it's a compliment, kid, I like your tie. I used to write that all the time. I love ties. I wear one almost every day at work, right? It's like I might be the last person still wearing a tie to work, but it's like I love that kind of stuff. But a kid is going to take it wrong. The other team's going to say like, oh man, that judge just like the rich kid's tie. I can't afford a tie. Just leave clothing out of it. If a kid has blue hair, guess what? He's got blue hair that day. Like just leave the physical appearance stuff out of it. Or resources. You comment like, boy, your computer really was crashing on you. You need to get a new computer. That's probably not in the cards for just a lot of high school kids. They don't control enough of their world to go buy that. And so that actually leads us to our next bullet point on it. Comments that are outside of the student's control. You got to remember that these are high school kids and they can't fix all of their problems, even the ones that they recognize in life. They're not in a stage where they can do a lot of stuff about things. So stuff they can't fix, please don't try to comment on it. It's just not going to be helpful feedback on it. And then lastly, what actually, I see this all the time from judges, and it makes my students really mad. And that was the arguments the judge wished the debaters made. Oh, you should have said so-and-so to this argument. Well, they didn't say that. Please judge the round you saw, not the round that you wish you saw. That's kind of the way we're going to look at it. Or your impression of the round. We're asking you to judge the round that's in front of you, not the one that you imagine in your head. And please, I know that sounds insulting, and here I condemn myself in this one. I have done that also. Okay, so what happens in a debate? Back to our packet on page 3, what happens in a debate? Teams argue for or against a particular resolution. Again, the resolution for this year is resolve the United States federal government should substantially increase fiscal redistribution in the United States. And there's 3 ways by which they could do that. A federal jobs guarantee, which means they're guaranteeing everybody can have a job if they want it, or expanding Social Security, which is a very broad way, and there's a lot of ways that can be done, or by providing a basic income. And we're kind of seeing that placed out as like basic income could be welfare payments, or it could be like a universal basic income where everybody in America gets a check on it, right? So it's pretty broad, but this is what the affirmative team is going to do. And if we had to go like top level debate theory on this one, we would say that a debate judge is really just judging whether they want to affirm that sentence or negate that sentence. And you might like one debater or another, but that's really all you're asking. All we're asking a judge to do is to affirm that sentence or negate that sentence. Wins or losses in a debate round should be entirely based on how well the teams convinced you, one way or the other, to decide about affirming or negating that resolution. And of course, the decisions based on the merits of the round and the arguments you saw, things you're going to consider. We've talked about this: evidence, argument, delivery, clarity, and analysis on it. We've said there's 4 debaters in the room. One side is an affirmative team, one side is a negative team. They're divided up where somebody is the first affirmative speaker, and the second affirmative speaker, the first negative speaker, and the second negative speaker. They have 3 kinds of speeches: the constructives, cross-examinations, or rebuttals. A constructive speech takes 8 minutes. And the first time that you watch a debate round, that 8 minutes is going to absolutely fly by. They're going to be talking kind of fast. They're going to be reading what might be kind of technical sounding reading. It's not going to be, I shouldn't say it's not likely to be all that conversational. They're not going to probably be telling you a story. They're going to lay out their case as to why you should vote affirmative. They're going to use some evidence, which is like cuts and quotes out of articles or from authorities. And they're going to try to lay it out in kind of a technical manner. It's not going to be real conversational about it. That's just kind of not the way that policy debate works. If you want to hear some conversational debate, we can see you again in the spring for some more stuff that is that way. But policy is going to be kind of technical. We're talking about policies. They're going to lay out facts. They're going to argue about facts and interpretations of the facts. So a constructive is 8 minutes. Then they're going to have a cross-examination where the negative team is going to come up and ask something from that kid that just talked. And then the negative team is going to have a constructive where they're going to lay out their case. Very similarly, they're going to dump a bunch of evidence. They're going to try to connect it together into a set of arguments. It's not going to be particularly conversational, but it's evidence driven. That's one of the cool things about policy debate, is that it's really just, hey, let me lay out the facts for you as I see them. It's going to be a cross-examination. So now we've heard from one affirmative speaker and one negative speaker. Then it rotates. We're going to have another affirmative speaker is going to come up, and he or she will answer what they just heard and reassert the affirmative position. It's going to be a cross-examination, and then the second negative speaker is going to come up. Then there's a quirky thing that happens in debate where after the second negative constructive, before we hear from the affirmative again, we hear from the negative twice. It's a 2 back-to-back speech of the negative team interrupted by a cross-examination, but it's 2 negative speakers in a row. And now the order has flipped. Now you're going to hear from the first affirmative speaker again, from the second negative speaker, and then it ends with the first affirmative speaker. So you'll notice that the team which is advocating the resolution, they are just affirming the resolution, operates as the bookends on this debate round. They're the first people you hear from and the last people you hear from. And then you'll see that everybody has an equal amount of speech time, but then there's that pocket in the middle where the negative team gets to debate uninterrupted, essentially. That's the method that you'll see. The kids will all do this on their own. You don't have to say like, hey, where's our second negative speaker? They will just get up on their own and do it. They will keep their own time. They will go in the probably correct order. I mean, they're teenagers, they're unpredictable sometimes. They'll probably go in the correct order. And you don't have to be the referee on this one. You don't have to be the moderator. You're just letting the kids go do what they're going to do. How do you decide a winner? Well, there's no formula. You just decide at the end of it which team made the case better that you should affirm or negate the resolution. And that's why you're a judge, not a scorer. We're not asking you to enter a score for the round. There's no like formula for judging. You make a judgment at the end of the round based on your judgment, which team made their case the better, which one is more convincing to you. Some people see debate as a communication activity, and they decide basically on which side communicated their point of view better. They emphasize speaking skills of the soft skills of debate, and they decide which one communicates their position most effectively. Some people see debate as, like a technical contest, and which one laid out evidence in a certain way or the most convincing set of data. Some people consider themselves policymakers, and if I was president of America, would I do this plan or not? Some people debated on decide on popularity and like, you know what, I like that kid, I'm going to vote for him. We would ask that you not do that. We would ask that you judge based on on the round that you actually saw. So I want to talk about what is next, what are sometimes called the rules of debate. All right, what are the rules of debate? Well, there are some time limits. There's a speech order. In Kansas, we have some specific rules about how to present evidence. And that's about it. There actually aren't a lot of rules in debate. Sometimes you'll hear kids get all worked up. You're like, oh, they broke the rules. Yeah, they probably didn't. There's actually not a lot of rules in debate. So don't worry about being a referee. You don't have to blow the whistle. You don't have to call the fouls. There's just not a lot there. Most of the rules of debate are actually just sort of conventions which have grown up over time. If you think you have a rules issue which needs adjudicating, don't sign your ballot. Wait till the end of the round, but don't sign your ballot. Come out, find a Catholic school student, find either a St. James student or an Aquinas student. They'll all be dressed like Catholic school kids. You say, hey, I need to go talk to a tournament official. They'll come grab me. If you think there's been a rules violation, but honestly, there probably hasn't been. There's just actually not that many rules out there to come violate. Most of the time, I mean, hey, I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to try to figure out if there was a rules violation. But I would say 80% of the time, my answer is, yeah, it's up to you to make a decision. I'll just kind of throw the ball back in your court on it. You're welcome to come get me, but you're a judge, make a judgment. Yeah, so some debate terminology. I want to kind of roll out. I'm going to switch the order that I'm going on here. Let's switch this one first. Okay, some debate terminology here. some words that you might hear on Saturday. And this is not comprehensive at all, but I want to just kind of throw out some common ones. You might hear someone talk about a prima facie case. It's a Latin phrase. It means like on the face of it. I have some kids in like Latin 3 that tell me, Mr. Wahlberg, it's actually prima facie. But everybody says prima facie other than the Latin kids. Anyway, but it basically means that an affirmative team needs to go present a logical case that makes the claim that there's some problem in the status quo and that they can fix it and that that's a good idea. There's a set of stock issues, which I'll introduce in a second. And the affirmative basically needs to win all the stock issues, more or less. I mean, if you're going to be a stock issues round, then you got to win them all. If a negative doesn't argue some particular thing about an affirmative case, that's fine. A negative actually has a strong position. They kind of pick what they want to argue about. And if they don't argue it, you can assume that both sides agree with it. And actually that happens in debates. It happens in real life too, that even people who oppose your idea might agree with parts of it. Negative arguments, which are unchallenged by the affirmative, are assumed to be conceded to the negative. And that means that there's something that is not prima facie about the affirmative position. So we say that if there's something the negative argues that the affirmative doesn't substantially or doesn't really address, then that's unchallenged, and neg's probably at a good position to win that count on that round. The term status quo is, I almost never use it outside of the debate world, but it's basically the current state of affairs. The negative team starts with the power of presumption. That is, if nobody ever does anything, the status quo is going to continue to operate pretty much like it operates right now. That's a couple of terms on it. You also might hear people use the term fiat. I first learned the term fiat in a religious context, right? As when Mary agreed to the angel Gabriel that she would bear baby Jesus, we say that Mary gave her fiat. Again, it's a Latin word. It's basically, it means make it so, or let it be done, or yes, I'm down for that. That's basically the fiat. The idea in a debate round of fiat is the affirmative can assume that if you vote affirmative in that round, then this make-believe plan will go into effect just like it's stated. This is a little tool to make debate actually work, because a negative might say, you know what, that's a really unpopular plan. Even if the judge likes it, Congress is going to strike it down. Well, then policy debate doesn't work very well. So fiat says, okay, let's pretend it passes Congress. Let's fiat as if the president signs it. So that's what you're going to hear. That's what the term fiat means on there. Another term I want to introduce is what's known as a disadvantage. This is one of the heart issues for debate, and it basically is a negative argument that says if you vote affirmative, if you fiscally redistribute money in one of those ways, there's going to be some unintended consequence that's bad, and it's very disadvantageous if it passes, right? So it's the idea, that's an argument. It's saying like the affirmative, if you do that, something bad is going to happen. So you're going to disrupt the tax structure. You're going to piss off the Russians. You're going to anger the turtles, whatever it would be. Like there's going to be some, just that Steve's giving me eyes right now. He's fought a turtle, I bet. Okay. But there's going to be some like disadvantage. I hope you haven't fought a turtle. There's going to be some disadvantageous situation that would come up as a result of voting affirmative. And that's a term that you will probably hear in a round. These are also called disads, because debaters like to create lingo. And they might be called DAs because they like to shorten their lingo, but they're all basically the same thing. There's some unintended consequence on it. You might also hear a couple of words that when I was debating 30 years ago, we almost didn't have in Kansas, but we have seen them since. The first one is the idea of a counter plan. So the affirmative affirms the resolution by offering a policy that matches that resolution. The negative might say, I have a different way to achieve those advantages. Now, I've put on here on the slide that it's probably a non-topical way. In the last few years, that's actually less true, and sometimes the negative team is also offering a totally resolutional topical way to achieve advantages. This is going to be one of those judgment call things. In my opinion, I have two teams then telling me to affirm the resolution, and I'm just going to vote affirmative. I'm not sure that that's necessarily what every judge thinks. So you are welcome to decide. If a negative is basically a counter plan, a proposal is saying like, we have some other way that you might achieve something good in society. Yeah. It's a possibility that could come up, and they are really exciting rounds when they happen. They could get convoluted, drop some breadcrumbs so you can backtrack if you need to. And there's a last word on here, which among some debaters is a naughty word, and it is critiques spelled with a K. And that's the way the Germans spell the word critic, or like critical. And because it entered high school debate through German philosophy, and because debaters like to lingoize things, they call them critiques. And because they like to abbreviate their lingo, sometimes it's just called the K. And these are a style of argument that's not about policy, but they're about some kind of social criticism or philosophical criticism. I'm going to say this next sentence, and I realize that I am on a call full of people that agreed to help 2 Catholic schools on this, so I might set off some alarm bells, and I just want to I want you to gird your loins for a second. Critical race theory in a debate world is a critique, spelled with a K, and it is considered a fair argument in academic debate. If critical race theory just like sets off all of your politics bells, I would encourage you to go back to the request I asked at the beginning, that you leave aside your personal opinions and just judge the round that you see in front of you, not the round that you wish happened in that. That said, these are not wildly common in our part of the world in a tournament in this style. It is possible. It's considered a fair game argument. I don't know that I can say that they are super likely to happen, but it is possible that you could come up. There would be some kind of social criticism on this. I have not seen really any compelling K arguments this year, but I'm sure they exist and I'm sure they're out there. Earlier, I used a term stock issue, and I want to address this really quickly. I identify 4 stock issues. Steve, how many stock issues do you teach? Do you still teach stock issues? You're saying 5? 1? Oh, he's unmuting himself.
He's trying to. We treat disadvantages and whether the plan is beneficial relative to the status quo as a separate stock issue, and we also identify the 4 that you've identified on the slide.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's room for discussion on this one about what might be a stock issue. So I'm going to lay out this, and then I'm going to tell you why you don't need to be terribly worried about this. But these are words that you might hear. We're in our terminology. And topicality is the idea that the affirmative is required to present a plan or a policy which meets the resolution. And if they are not meeting the resolution, then that is some reason why the judge might vote against them. And I want you to think about this just logically. If you are affirming the resolution or negating the resolution, and the affirmative team presents something which is not the resolution, well, then you can't vote for the affirmative team because they're not affirming the resolution. I'm going to also say that some debaters just run this, they run a topicality argument every round, regardless of the speech of the team that they are facing off against. They might accuse the affirmative team of being untopical, even though everybody in the room knows they are perfectly topical. It's just considered one of those arguments that people try and debate, and it's not dirty pool. It's just they're running a spread offense is basically what they're trying to get every player open. The second issue is a question of harms, and harms is how bad is the current situation that you might need to vote affirmative. Here, Mr. Du Bois distinguishes disads separately. At our school, we kind of roll them together, so that's another way of looking at harms. But basically, or if you vote affirmative, will something bad happen? Is there some negative consequence on it? Inherency is more of an affirmative burden than anything else. It's basically like what's currently being done. If, for instance, on Friday at 4:59 p.m., Congress decides to go pass some huge Social Security reform, and a kid shows up at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning proposing that you vote for that same Social Security reform, well, the negative might say, well, they're not presenting an inherent argument because the status quo is actually doing all those things. Inherency is kind of an affirmative burden. I don't think you're super likely to hear a lot of it, but I suppose it's a fair game issue. And then solvency is how well the affirmative plan will fix the issue. All of these arguments, I want you to set aside the lingo and just look at what you got here. This is how policy is made. Does the policy identify some harm, and does it do something about it, and does it create something worse? I mean, this is just real world how policy is made. Is anybody doing anything about it right now? Or if they are, is it doing it enough? And if we change the policy, is it going to actually fix the problem we looked at earlier? There's nothing magical about stock issues. Debaters try to turn these things into magical terms. This is how policy is made. Is this a good idea or not? Will it work? Is somebody else already working on it? That's the heart of the stock issues, and that's kind of your role as a judge. Now, I want to come back to this, which is what we had as our first slide on it. And I want you to just relax. You're probably going to do fine as a judge. I've just now talked for, oh my goodness, 50 minutes. And I might, your brain might be exploding with too much debate stuff in it at one time. And I want you to, again, relax. You're going to be fine. Debaters are there to come meet you where you are. They train themselves into how to talk to adults and how to recognize who their audience is. Our tournament is a novice tournament, which means they're learning the game and they're going to screw up some of this stuff. And you're probably a lay judge and you're probably going to screw up some too. You're learning it also. You have permission to go learn the game. Or there might be an open tournament and they're really excited to share the game with you. These are kids that have been doing it for a while and they have also learned how to talk to judges, but like they're ready to share the game. They love it and they want you to love it also. Be fair-minded, stay honest. Don't judge your feelings, judge the round that you actually saw, because the debaters are there to reach you and they're going to do their best to do it.